ToTok has been removed again from the Google Play Store.
Hey John, you have a story about ToTok, which has been taken off the app stores, and again they came back into the app stores. Could you like to elaborate a little bit on that one?
Yeah, sure. So if you're not familiar with ToTok, that is essentially an app that was developed, piece together some of this. There's various stories, but it was developed by a number of sometimes security experts to create a secure mechanism to have communications, verbal and not so verbal.
Okay.
With and the key here is that it's pretty much devoted to the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and some of the local telephone companies, the communication companies, I should say, were touting this as, hey, here's a great product that allows you to do free calls. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about this is that back in December, the New York Times ran a story, and you just think about this thing, it's kind of like a TikTok. TikTok is very popular, but here's one that's almost the same sounding. So we know that there's probably a lot of people who may have gotten confused, but there's still people who are using it for, legitimate reasons. But the New York Times ran this article in December and said, no, this app is probably one you don't want. It is being used to spy on its users, capturing and listening in on conversations, and it recommended you remove it.
Does the story prompted to removal of this app from the app store?
Let's remove it. And so Google and Apple both got rid of it. Right? They took this, and said, hey, this has got to get going. This has got to get gone. The developers of the app came back and said, well, we're not spying. This is, in fact, we're developed by people who are in the security field. We have very, good vetting. We're doing the right thing. Finally, Google said, okay, we'll put it back. And they did it kind of silently. They didn't really do it, with any big fanfare or any big news. And then just recently it disappeared again. So there's a lot of suspicion that Google, recognized that there's probably something to the story. Apple never has reinstated it. So certainly this is an app that we don't recommend, for people to use until some of these questions are resolved.
So the issue is with actually using the app for communications, not with downloading it and it's doing something to your device?
I don't think anybody ever thought that the app was like doing other things to your device, like infecting it with malware or anything like that. It was more of what you were using the app for was being captured. Okay. So if you were doing something sensitive like business transaction or other communications.
Because with the similarity in names to TikTok, you would think maybe it's one of these rogue, you got the wrong app, now it's downloaded, now it's going out and doing something you don't want it to do, but that's not the situation here.
That hasn't been proven, let's put it that way. Okay. I don't think anyone's even suggested that that's the case. It's always a little, like you said, Joe, it's always a little concerning to me when you have a look-alike or sound-alike app. Yeah. This doesn't sit well with me sometimes.
So this is more like we're letting you do free communications on the unwritten agreement that we're going to listen in, or even if it's, I would imagine that the complication here is what's considered anonymous, right? They might be saying, oh, we're anonymizing your traffic and we're not keeping any details, but still, there are privacy concerns over, what can be kept, and, especially, internationally, what's allowed. So, you could understand where a security firm could say, oh, no, this is fine. We're anonymizing, we're encrypting, but we have to collect metrics, right? Sometimes we could say, oh, we need metrics, or we're just collecting your source and your destination. But still, to a certain set of standards, that still breaks privacy concerns. So,
a lot of that happens. Location data is one that a lot of apps want. Whether it's just kind of in an innocuous app, everybody wants a location because that's things that they can use to deliver ads to you. So that's one of the things that we see as a privacy concern a lot. But I think the real issue here can be as well is that even though this app is off of the Apple Store and off of the Google Play Store, if it's on your device, you can still use it. Right? It's not blocked, at least not that I'm aware of. Google has some tools that can block it. But
I was going to say that is something they can do, right? Can't they remove apps?
They can't remove them, but they have a product called Verify Apps that runs on an Android phone, and what Verify will prevent it from executing if they think it's malicious. Nobody can remove an app but you.
Apple can't either?
No, Apple cannot either. So that's not something that anybody can do. Some of the managed services might be able to do it depending on the product you're using, but Google and Apple do not. They don't have a mechanism that does that. But they can stop them from running. That's maybe a semantics, I guess, in some way. But the challenge here is you can still use the app, and people may not realize that this app is not so good, and not realize it's not on the Play Store or not on the iTunes Store, because they could technically still use it, and it's just not. So it's one of those things that you get some of these apps like we were talking earlier that look alikes, the sound alikes, even bigger ones. You think, okay, if you still have it on your phone, I have a couple Apple apps that I know I've installed on my phone that haven't been supported, haven't had any updates in years and years and years. And it always worries me that, is that causing me a security issue, as a security professional. So it's just things to think about is that, any apps you have, make sure that they're legitimate, that they're still supported and still out there.
So, John, you mentioned that this sort of happened without a lot of fanfare, right? They just sort of did it. And do you think it's the type of thing that more will come out about, or it's just going to be sort of dormant? And I'm wondering if we'll ever kind of get the backstory here.
Yeah, I got a couple buddies I've been asking around just to see if anybody knows anything more. And honestly, I haven't really gotten anybody who has any leads on why it disappeared again out of the Google Play Store. Typically that happens, like if somebody like Kaspersky or Imperva or any of the other vendors that we've talked about in this program before, they publish a story, look out. I mean, I'm not trying to focus in on any vendor, but it's just those vendors that publish, hey, this issue has, this app has a problem. Right. They tend to get reported to Google, or they tend to get reported to Apple, and then they're gone. Depending on who that reporter or what that report has from a publication perspective, it may receive a lot of fanfare or not. I know Google, for example, removes a lot of apps all the time just because they're maybe violated terms of service. And there's nothing that ever gets said about it.
Well, because Google does less up front, right? Doesn't Apple do a lot more screening up front before they'll let something into the store?
There's maybe some politics there, but it's from one side of the fence or the other. But I think that's a fair statement. Apple has a lot more stringent rules on who can put things on the iTunes Store. So a lot of times those things get researched a little bit heavier. Google has allows more things there, but I think in some ways that they scan the code a little bit more thoroughly. So it's maybe a trade-off, so that things may get out there and then get removed from Google Play, whereas it may not, similar things may never have gone onto iTunes. And so there's a little bit of a trade-off sometimes where things that might go, from a publication perspective, which is a better strategy. But Google certainly does allow more things to go on the Play Store, and I don't know if that's because more people develop for Android or it's just they have a more lenient status.
Got it. Cool. Well, that's interesting. We'll have to see if we ever find out what's really going on here.
Yeah, and maybe it's a follow-up we can do some other time on the program, because I'm curious too. It's certainly haven't seen anything from the developer. The last time they were removed, the developer was very vocal about, so please put us back on. We're not malicious. There's been no word that I've seen.
But the users have the ability to restrict the access to location services. I think that's the only advise at this point?
They can control that. Yeah, you can do a lot of controls, but most people just accept the default, whatever the app asks for.
I mean, I think if you're going to do that, you'd probably uninstall it.
That's right. Giving proper permissions, maybe restricted permissions in the location services, as well as sometimes most of the apps, even though they don't require, they ask for all the permissions to all the apps, like for example, camera, mic, location services.